Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger of bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of Workology.
You might be contemplating a career change in 2016, and you are not alone. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that voluntary separations from employers are at their highest levels since 2008. Welcome to the Workology podcast. Since many of us are likely in the job hunt or considering making a move, I decided to talk with some resume and career coach experts for this episode on how to jumpstart your job search in 2016. Today, I'm talking with career experts, including, and our first guest, Chris Fields of ResumeCrusade.com. Chris is a resume writer and career coach who has been featured by Oprah for his honest and insightful career and resume advice. Chris, welcome to the Workology podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You've always been very nice to me, and thank you so much for this.
Sure. No, I love your advice. It's honest. It's just good information, and you're not trying to talk down. You're just giving them insightful information to help them in their career search or any workplace problem, including human resources.
You know what? I appreciate you saying that, because that's part of my process, is to let people know I don't work for a company. I work for myself. I was in the job search, and having an HR background, I know that there's a disconnect from what people tell you to do versus what's actually happening out there. And I thought it was important to share that. Like, you see a lot of these people saying, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then it's so easy, but people make it difficult. Well, if you actually look for a job, it is very hard to look for a job, and there's a lot more going on. So I try to make the process as simple as possible, using not only my education and expertise, but my background and what I think makes sense. And talking to people like you who also deal with talent, getting the ideas from them, like, this is what we're seeing, it's frustrating. And, if job seekers knew this. So I try to incorporate all of that in there. So thanks for saying that, because that's definitely a part of what I do.
Well, let's go ahead and get to our first question. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show here, American employees are making job changes at record high levels. My thought is that our podcast listeners are probably, or a majority of them are likely considering making their own moves. So what advice do you have for them to do first, even if they are just passively considering making the jump?
So, Jessica, let me just say this. Everybody is looking for a job. Even those people who don't think they are, everybody's kind of open to new opportunities. And so you're talking about passive job seekers and active job seekers. So let's take it into two categories. For active job seekers, if you're serious about getting a new job, then behave that way. And what I mean by that is you need to have a total resume branding package. So your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, and your social profiles need to reflect that you are in the job market. And when I say you need to reflect it, I don't necessarily mean you put seeking opportunities everywhere, but have them cleaned up. Make sure your resume is updated. Make sure your cover letter is updated. Make sure it says who you are and tells your narrative. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is updated and has your current information on there. So many people do not use LinkedIn, and I'm starting to hear from my clients and other people that they are getting calls from recruiters based on their LinkedIn alone. So you want to make sure you get that taken care of. Your social profiles. We all know the Facebook horror stories. You do not want to have a bunch of craziness on your Facebook, and a prospective employer goes to you and finds you and then sees that, and then you're out of the running. So clean all of that up. It's a total package. And then also check with your network. Most of us have a network. Some people's network is dying off and not as viable. So you want to make sure you're freshening up your network and make new connections. But that's also a key part and very pivotal if you're actively seeking a new job, and also passively. So let's talk about the passive candidates. People who are okay with their job right now, but kind of got their eye open if something else comes along. So I also think you need to make sure your LinkedIn is up to date, because a lot of people are being poached on LinkedIn. So you don't have to submit your resume, but if a recruiter jumps on LinkedIn to search for someone who does what you are good at, they want to be able to find you, and you want them to find you as well. So make sure your LinkedIn is up to date. And then, if you're a passive candidate, another thing you can do is send an email to your trusted network of friends and say something like, hey, I've been working here and everything's cool, but I just kind of want to see if there's anything out there. And if you know of anything that you think might be a good fit, just let me know. And just kind of explain like you're not totally actively looking for a job, but you are open to new ideas and new things if somebody has something they want to talk about because the network is huge.
So you're saying that everybody is looking for a job right now. They're active or passive, it doesn't matter. People are open to new opportunities.
I believe so. And I think even people who are happy at their jobs, if the right opportunity comes along and somebody wants to contact them, I think they would be open to that. Now, of course, there's some people who are like, well, I would never leave my job. I like, okay, whatever. But even if you just look around, look at some of the coaches in the NFL and in the college football, and look at some of the news media people who are moving from place to place. I mean, that's a microcosm of what goes on in the real work environment. So I've had several clients who've had nice jobs and they called me and said, hey, you know what? Capital One called me out of the blue. I didn't apply for anything. They found me on LinkedIn or, whatever big name company. And then they said, well, I think I should at least talk to them. And the next thing you know, there's an offer on the table and they're gone. So that happens. I mean, it's part of our landscape nowadays. So I think everybody is passively looking to a degree. And I think that's a smart thing too.
Well, you mentioned social media, and you and I actually met. We first connected on social media before we met in real life. So let's talk about that. You mentioned Facebook, LinkedIn. What suggestions and recommendations do you have for the podcast listeners when it comes to social?
Well, and my stance on it has changed. I used to think that everybody needs to be all over the place on all these different networks. I don't necessarily think that anymore. I think that it's become a huge recruiting tool and even a verification tool. An employer is going to look you up and do a quick once-off. Even companies who don't have a large social presence, they'll have somebody on the team that can look on LinkedIn and Facebook and try to find you. So I think it's important to make sure you keep your social media, clean and you're not talking about things that could hurt your chances. But also, social media can be a very powerful tool to help you get a job. So, first, Twitter, for example, there are lots of jobs being tweeted every day. Even more and more now, there are more jobs being tweeted, and sometimes they're tweeted before they're put on the job board. So, people need to realize that you can use Twitter to find a job and a good job. When you talk about the things that you're interested in and connect with other industry experts, that can help you get opportunities. I got a call the other day from a guy in England who had been following me for a while and said, hey, I had an opportunity and you were the first person I thought of. And it all came because of social media. So social media can be a very powerful tool to help you get opportunities and offers. So, you know, think about it and think about what you're doing on there and how you're doing it. And also, one thing I always tell people, if you're getting your feet wet with Twitter or Instagram or what have you, don't expect that once you create an account, everybody's going to come flood you and connect with you. It's a slow process and it's communication. You read something, you share it, you retweet, you send out a thought, you share an article, and then it just happens over time. But you invest in it. But social media is very big nowadays, and you can use it in a good way, or you can use it in a bad way. So try to use it in a good way to help you get to where you want to get to.
It's definitely a great way to expand your circle and connect with like-minded people that you maybe don't have a relationship with yet. I mean, Twitter for me is such a great way to reach out to somebody before maybe you connect with them on LinkedIn or you try to pick up the phone and give them a call or shoot them a blind email.
Yeah, like you said, you and I would have never connected. Everybody who I am really connected and tight with in the HR and recruiting circles would have never happened if it wasn't for social media. So it's very powerful, and you can definitely use it to your advantage as a job seeker.
Can you leave us with your best resume or career tip for our listeners?
So I know you said or, but I think that those are kind of related, or there's two tips really is what I'm getting at here. So best career tip is to always keep your eyes open, even if you got a job and you love it. Ask yourself every 2 or 3 years, do you still love it? Are you still liking what you do? Do you feel valued? And if not, then put your resume out there and see what happens. I recently read an article that said something like that was titled "Why You Should Be Used to Looking for a New Job Every 3 Years." And I know that sounds crazy to some people, and who wants to do that, and all of that. But I think we're really getting to that point where job tenure is very low, and to think about your career is working for some place for 10, 15, 20 years. I don't think you're serving yourself the best way by doing that. So always stay aggressive and keep your eyes open. That's my best career advice. My best resume tip is to just get it updated. I mean, I know I'm a resume writer. I know that sounds like business development. I know somebody's rolling their eyes and they're thinking, well, of course he's going to say that. But I tell you, I have seen some amazing things happen to people who just got their resume updated. And not to say that my work is all that great, but I do think it is great. But what I'm my point is that they've gotten jobs or even interviews for jobs that they wouldn't have got with their old resume. So if you've written your own resume and you've always written your own resume, maybe it's time to have somebody else take a look at it. And you don't have to hire me. There are thousands of resume writers. Just do some searching, read some stuff, whichever one fits your whichever one resonates with you. I get so many people that contact me and say, I like your style. I like what you said on LinkedIn the other day. I like what you tweeted the other day. And I feel like you're the guy for me. That's important to me because I want anybody who works with me to know that I'm not like every other resume writer or any other resume writer. My approach is a little different. My process is a little different. And I'm going to give you a product that's different. So that's important to me. So when someone says that to me, that lets me know that they didn't just look me up. They looked me up and did some research. So my point is, if you've always written your own resume, consider letting somebody else do it because you may be too close to it and you may not be doing yourself the best service. And then the last thing I'll say about this whole thing, best advice, your network could possibly trump your resume. If you have a great network, I've had so many people who just never had a resume before because they've always had a good network. But now their network is, people are retiring, people are having hardships themselves, so now they need a resume. But the point being is if you got a good network that you can call up and say, hey man, I need a job, and they can say, I got you, come over here. That's the best, if you can do that. But if most of us don't have that, so make sure you get everything together: network, resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, all of it, and have a consistent brand out there.
Where can people go to learn more about you, Chris, and what you do?
Okay, so the website is resumecrusade.com. On Twitter, I've rebranded myself. It's also Resume Crusade on Twitter and on Instagram. So what I try to do, on the website, there's articles about my thoughts and experiences dealing with clients and talking to people about what's going on with the job search. Also on Instagram, I try to give examples of some of the work I've done lately. I kind of blur out or redact my customers' information because you don't want to put that out there, but you can still kind of see the design. And then on Twitter, I share a lot of good content from both resume world and job search world and human resources as well, because that's where my background is. So they can contact me there. My email address is chris@costofwork.com. That's my first website, Cost of Work. I'm going to get that changed over to Resume Crusade too. I'm working to get that done. But right now it's chris@costofwork.com, and then Resume Crusade on Twitter and on Instagram, and then on LinkedIn, I'm Christopher Fields, MLHR, if anybody wants to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, and we will be continuing this series on how to jumpstart your job search in 2016 for HR professionals and recruiters. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
I'm here with Dawn Rasmussen of Pathfinder Writing Career Services. Dawn, welcome to the Workology podcast.
Thanks for having me on here, Jessica.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the work that you do.
Well, gosh, ironically, I had a friend from college recontact me recently, and he said, gosh, I still have the resume you wrote for me in college, but I've updated it since then. And I thought, oh my goodness, that can't be good. But he said he's always kept adding to it, and it kept getting him jobs. And my own route is that I had worked quite a bit in the hospitality industry. I was a meeting planner. I worked in the tourism side of things, and I ended up working as a state school to career director, working with HR people, getting students connected to jobs. And so that employment ended and I was looking at my next opportunity, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should be a resume writer." And I said, "What?" And she said, "You're already talking to students and working with employers. That would be a perfect thing for you." So I jumped into it. I got certified. I started educating myself on the formalities of the resume writing craft. And so here I am.
Awesome. Well, we're talking with HR and recruiting professionals here on the podcast, and I thought it would be best to reach out to some career experts and resume writing experts to help my audience sort of think about how they should position themselves for a new job in 2016. So what advice can you give us to get started? Maybe we're thinking about looking at other opportunities this year.
The first thing I would actually suggest is physician needed to heal thyself. I sort of joke about that, but that's so true. I have so many HR clients that are in the process of revamping their resume, and I will ask them, I say, so have you been keeping track of your records of what your metrics are? "Oh, no, I haven't really done that," or "I haven't updated my resume for a very long time." And it just, some of the strategies that these folks employ every day in their work as they parse and look for talent and hire people, they are not applying them themselves. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there for sure.
So if they're looking at metrics and analytics in terms of updating their resume, what kind of things should they be considering?
Well, I realize that HR and recruiting is such a broad topic, but really you need to be thinking about, what are the metrics you're being measured on your job performance? Have you, there's so many different areas. Have you reduced risk on the job if it's a safety issue? If so, how much did you reduce that by? Have you reduced employee attrition rate or increased retention rates? How have you boosted employee satisfaction scores? How have you basically worked with employment, your succession planning and things like that. So it's all those things that you do every day, but you have to take that moment and really have a conscious thought about how am I owning my part in this process. It's not boasting, but it's just merely stating what your value has been in this process and then coming up with the numbers. Numbers are important, as we all know. When you're interviewing somebody else, you're asking for metrics. You need to get those metrics into your own work too, to show progress and how you positively contributed to the company.
What's one piece of maybe secret advice, like your go-to advice that you would give these senior level HR and recruiting pros who are just getting started?
I would say you definitely need to have a personal branding statement. If you can't articulate what your value is or why someone should hire you to really make yourself stand out from somebody else or the competition, you're really not going to give anybody a reason to buy what you're selling. So understanding what your unique value proposition is really important. That's a key piece, in addition to having a very clear job target headline at the top of your resume that summarizes what you're all about.
One thing I'm seeing a lot of is I'm seeing folks cross-pollinate or move from industry to industry, maybe from oil and gas, where I am right now in Oklahoma City, which is not doing so hot, to maybe tech or retail or some other market. What suggestions do you have for job seekers who are looking at making the move, maybe from gas and oil to tech or some other industry?
Well, I'd say the first thing you need to do is get real with your transferable skill sets. I mean, as long as you have the same skill sets are applicable across all industries and fields, then that's something you can pack in your suitcase and take with you. If you are feeling as though you're not really clear on what the new field is all about, then that would really demand your attention to signing up for some professional development classes so you can learn a little bit more about that industry and field so you can really speak to in the jargon that's unique and specific to that particular area. So you can definitely get caught up with that as a transition point.
Where can people go to learn more about you and what you do?
My website is pathfindercareers.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, certainly open to connecting with people. I'm also on Twitter, as well as my handle's @Dawn Rasmussen.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today about career advice from the experts for HR and recruiting.
Thanks for having me, Jessica.
I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that we're seeing the highest level of voluntary separations since 2008. That makes it particularly challenging in human resources and recruitment, where we're really responsible for the hiring and growth of an organization. However, I think we're really not very good at thinking about our own career path. Your career path is really a form of self-care, where you need to look at your own personal and professional goals for you as an individual and not just the entire organization. I urge you to take a look and consider your own personal and career goals, whether you're with your current employer or a new one. Make a list, build a path, set some milestones, and really get out there and work to achieve it, whether it's in human resources and recruitment, in a different industry altogether, or you're just moving from oil and gas, let's say, to the call center world or manufacturing. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast powered by Blogging for Jobs, where we discuss the art and science of human resources recruitment in the workplace. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, your host, and you can visit Blogging for Jobs to access our archives as well as resources that support this podcast episode, including links to Chris's website, Dawn's, as well as Dawn's book, and another helpful ebook I have for you that you can access on how to jumpstart your job search. Have a great week.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by Total Picture.